Good afternoon. I'm welcoming you to our next session right here, which is the performances of the Art Song Composition Award winners. And so we're grateful, I mean really grateful, to have the long-term leadership of Carol Mickelson, who's been the coordinator of this competition for many, many years and does an excellent job of working with all those who apply and those who judge, and making it such a great program that NATS supports and has. So, Carol?
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So happy you all could be here. Does everybody have program notes so far? Now, the program itself is printed in the convention program, as well as bios of the performers and composers. Let's see. The program is on page 49, so you might want to go ahead and turn to that. We're very pleased this year for the first time to have two performances. As you know, now it's an annual event, and so our convention being every other year, we have two. So we have the winner of the 2017 and the winner of the 2018, and we'll hear performances of each of those. And I would like to thank everybody involved with this, because it's a lot of work on everybody's part. And a special thanks to Lori Laitman, who is our advisor, mentor, angel, whatever. And she's going to introduce the composers. And then at the end after the performances, we'll have a little Q&A with the composers. As you know, Todd, the composer of the Foursquare Cathedrals, is going to sing, so he needs not to be speaking first. So, thank you. Thank you, Carol. Thank you.
Yeah, Todd is the poet for Foursquare. It's Matt. Yes, but so he's still not going to speak. I just want to say that I love these two song cycles. There isn't a word that isn't so incredibly set for the voice and for the poem, for each of the poems. And I think you're in for a real treat. I mean, there's just incredible attention to detail and inventiveness and wonderful interplay. And I hope you can enjoy it and think of some great questions for both Benjamin and Matt afterwards. So thank you.
house is small, and almost 100 years old. Inside, the oaken posts and beams make the living room seem like a glade. When friends pronounce it comfortable, it's 1910 that comforts them, and nothing I have done. There must be a room in the human heart that's older than the body, and it's good to be there in that Foursquare Cathedral, where nothing has changed since before we were made. The wallpaper says hello. The wallpaper misses you something awful. The wallpaper can't stop wondering when you are thinking of coming home. The clock's moved on. The sink's 10 million tears are dry. Our floors have gotten over you, or so they claim and claim. The windows clearly feel the same. But call me soon, my love, and tell me what to say. Next time the fading and tedious wallpaper whispers, "You're beautiful," household yesterday appeared a scar of brilliant green in the icy lake. Today arcs blue across its face and far, and where this morning still was finely chosen. Half my life is gone to others' business, which, well done or not, it matters not, but that it's gone, and won't be gotten back. And half my love is wasted too, wasted not on you, where all my deeps and deeps of love are damned and so belong, wasted not on you, but on loving you wrong. My sorrow is tomorrow's only season. And it comes on now, like this cold thaw comes upon the lake, or like a soft song one sings to sing the past to sleep, only to keep it wide Here's a day, and here's another. Says God feeling chancy, says God feeling grand. Hell, here. A stack of days, a week, says God, nonchalant, a penny candy in his cheek, the glimmer in his eye, never giving him away. He's a player, all right. Across a blue cloth, as he answers them over, the gold coins shimmer from his fat black purse.
So I just wanted to acknowledge Kevin Korth on piano was amazing, and Matt Boehler was amazing singing his own work. And next we have Mark Diamond, baritone, and Jeffrey Peterson, piano, to sing Benjamin Boyle's masterpiece. So, thank you.
As of old, Phoenician men to the tin isles sailing, straight against the sunset and the edges of the earth, chanted loud above the storm and the strange seas wailing. So in mighty deed alone, on the chainless breezes blow, in my coracle of verses, I will sing of lands unknown. Flying from the scarlet city, where a lord that knows no pity mocks the broken people praying round his iron throne. Sing about the hidden country, fresh and full and quiet green. Sailing over seas uncharted to a port that none has seen. I am nature, the mighty mother, I am the law, ye have no other. I am the flower and the dewdrop fresh, I am the battle's filth and strain. I am the widow's empty pain. I am the sea to smother your breath, I am the bomb, the falling death. I am the fact and the crushing reason to thwart your fantasies' newborn treason. I am the spider making a net, I am the battlefield blood wet. I am the wolf that follows the sun, and I will catch him at day be done. rest is low, the battered wire wastes and turns to rust. And Helen's eyes and Isolde's lips are dust, and dust the shoulders and the breasts of snow. The fairy people from a wood are gone. No dryads have I found in all our trees. No Triton blows his horn about our seas, and Arthur sleeps hands in Avalon. Now in the filth of war, the Ezra shout of battle, it is vexed, and yet so oft out of the deeps of old, it rose aloft, that they who watch the ages may not doubt. Though often bruised, oft broken by the rod, yet, like the phoenix, from each fiery bed, higher the stricken spirit lifts its head, higher, till the beast become a little druid wood, where I would slumber if I could. For there the white owls all night long in the scented gloom divine. Hear the wild, strange, tuneless song of fairy voices, dancing, dancing under the moon, until amid the pale of dawn the wandering wars began to swoon. Leave the world and come that most of all on earth I hate. Though I have passed through many sorrows and have been in bloody fields, sad seas and countries desolate, like eyes of one long dead, the empty windows stare, and I fear to cross the garden. I fear to linger there, for in that house I know a little silent room where someone's always waiting, waiting in the gloom to draw me with an evil eye and hold me fast. I was come again unto the house where my beloved dwells, after long years of wandering and pain. And I stood out beneath the drenching rain, and all the street was bare and black with night. But in my true love's house was warmth and light. Only a homeless grave true love's house again, and stood unseen amid a winter night, and the lamp burned within a rosy light. And the wet street was shining in the Love, there is a castle built in a country desolate, on a rock above a forest, where the trees are grim and great. Nothing can trouble it, and it shall be a resting place, dear heart, for you and me. Through the wet and waving forest, with an age or sorrow laden, singing of the world's regret, wanders wild the fairy maiden. Often to the castle gate up she looked, with vain endeavor for her soulless loveliness. To the castle winneth but within the sacred court, hidden high upon the mountain, wandering in the castle garden, lovely folk enough there be, breathing in another air, drinking of a purer fountain, and among that folk beloved, there's a place for you and me.
everybody. And so we'll take questions for Matt and for Benjamin. Do we have like a microphone if somebody wants to ask a question?
You out here in the house? Right here on
Oh, right there. Okay, yes. We had a little session very early this morning at 7:45. I think we're all really tired, where I asked a lot of questions, my own questions about how they came to these texts, how they chose them, things like that. Maybe we could just reiterate how you found your text for people, and then maybe people will get inspired to ask more questions.
Certainly. Should I flip the switch?
Do you want to just come up here?
Oh, let's go. You can just go there. Okay.
I'll take your side.
The question was how we found our texts. I found my text thanks to a good friend, the librettist Mark Campbell. I was looking for texts that were, I'd been up for a while, been studying things that were in the public domain, and I was looking for something more contemporary, and he recommended Todd Boss. He pointed me to a volume of his poetry and his something that had been in the New Yorker, and I saw that he was a Minnesotan, and I immediately went and bought the book. And the proof is right in front of you. These are beautiful poems that have a density of their own, but they're also truly musical. I mean, Todd has a musical ear, and they're truly lyrics, and that's the thing that truly drew me to them, because I'm sure that we're all fans of contemporary poetry, and that is not often the case with a lot of contemporary poetry, that the poet it sings, and that's certainly what drew me to the poetry.
Well, I'm not going to lie, I've been sitting on that poem for a long time. It's amazing. I grew up loving C.S. Lewis, as I'm sure many people here do. This set of poems is the first thing of his to come into public domain. Speaking of, it just came into public domain just about a couple days before I started working on it, which I'd had my eyes on for a long time. And it's fun. The Lewis estate is super, super stringy. You cannot set text. You can't even get permission to do anything. I mean, they have a movie franchise. Anyway, so it was a real treat to actually work with something like this that I've loved forever. I mean, of course, it's also timely. It's the anniversary of the end of World War I, of which these poems refer to quite a bit. So, I always think that the best song cycles come about when all these happy things come together. The right commission, the right people, the right text, and they all kind of magically coalesce once in a while.
Yeah, I have one question for you. I noticed that your middle initials are C and S. Is there any relation?
I've gotten a lot of that recently. No relation.
Yeah. So another thing I had asked this morning was how each of these composers came to art song, and I asked them also to speak a little bit about their process. So maybe we could do a little bit of reiterating about that. Yeah.
Let me start this time. Well, the fun thing about the two of us is I think we come at it from, in some ways, a very different perspective. Obviously, you heard that Matt is a phenomenal singer. I'm a pianist, so I come at it from the other side of the stage. But, one of the things that we were talking about this morning, I always think of art song as one of the more kind of intimate type of things that a composer can put in front of an audience. There's really no hiding things. It's not a big orchestra piece where you've got, do you guys know what the violas are doing? Not everybody has to. That's not the point. But in something like this, there's no hiding. It's the you and the text, right? It's the performer. It's the, what you are looking at one singer delivering one text to you, and you have one person supporting them, right? And so in essence, it kind of, it's a genre that I think attracts us in many ways because there's no artifice about it. It's very real. There's no hiding in art song. It's very direct. And that's not always the way with other types of music, with instrumental music, where you have to define a form, right? Or with choral music, which is a very different beast indeed, of course, as you all know. So, I don't know if you want to add to any of that.
There's not actually too much that I could add to that. How many people here yesterday went to the talk back, I suppose a talk forward, with Stephanie Blythe and Christine Brewer? What I thought was so interesting about it, as someone who grew up as an actor and then became a singer, one of the best things about art song is that you don't have a set, you don't have costumes. It's just two people inventing everything from scratch, and it's precisely the intimacy of art song that drew me to it. And also, I am a lousy pianist, and I had in my mind that I wanted to make something that I could perform. So that was certainly in the back of my mind as well.
Nobody has questions yet? Or, oh, here's some. Yes, Julia.
I always have a question. Speaking of our talk yesterday, Stephanie gave that really vehement endorsement for the state of art song composition now, that it is flourishing, that it's a bumper crop. I was wondering if you could share your thoughts on that, maybe even kind of tracing back through your times as students, if you feel a change, if you feel a wild wind blowing.
Right, sure. I do think that, generally speaking, in this country, when you go to conservatory to study composition, you don't study vocal music, right? And we're all expected to turn out string quartets and orchestra pieces, which is really kind of ridiculous in one way, unless your heart is really set on that, because just practically those type of pieces are very hard to get produced, especially large-scale work, like pieces of 45 minutes or longer for orchestra. If you just write that and send it to an orchestra, good luck. And so in many ways, there's a practical thing at work here, right? Where by composers working on smaller forms and less forces, there's a lot more opportunity for it to spread. And, by having it spread, of course, then that leads to other opportunities. So I think that's the practical side of it. I also think, I taught at Westminster Choir College for 8+ years, and so maybe I don't have I'm a little skewed on this, because I think, all my students, they're all vocal people, they all love the voice, they all want to write for choir and art song. But from my education experiences, I went to Peabody and I went to Penn, that was never on the table, and it was always kind of, wait, you want to write songs? Like, why do you want to do that? So I think that's changing for all those reasons.
In some ways, no matter what the answer to the question might be, who cares? There's great art song coming out right now. I think that, maybe it went underground for a little while because there was more prestige for a while coming out of the academy, which thank goodness composers my age don't have to deal with anymore, but all the stuff that earlier composers went with through serialism and all that, that rigmarole. I think it's actually very traditional for composers to have a large output of vocal music. I mean, even we think of Stravinsky with all of his giant orchestral pieces, but actually almost half of his works are vocal. So in that way, maybe we're getting back to something more traditional. In the same way, I've had some folks ask me about, it's so unusual to see an opera singer who composes. We are out there, and there are other composers, certainly, a good number of female composers actually, that have, from other areas that may not be operatic soloists, but that have contributed a great deal to, there's a renaissance of vocal music. Meredith Monk, and certainly Lisa Bielawa with her, with Victoire, and Caroline Shaw with Room Full of Teeth. So it's a great time. I don't know if it's my place to ask why. I'm not going to ask why. I'm just very happy that it's here and that it's being embraced and recognized for the beautiful thing that it is.
Greg, do you want to come up?
First of all, Matt, bravo, both of you.
Thank you.
Matt, were you on the cover of Opera News? Do I remember that correctly?
I was, yes.
I don't know if any of you remember this Opera News cover from some years ago, several years ago.
Yeah.
The cover story was something about the relationship of words and music. And so there was this tall bass dressed in black and a relatively short woman dressed in white.
Yeah.
And the one in black, I don't know if you were music or words.
I was words and she was music, Robin Flynn.
Yeah, but I've been trying to figure out where have I seen you before, and that's where it is on the cover of Opera News. I have a question for both of you. Matt, I'm curious about the first and third poems, how visually on the page it's relatively unconventional. And I wonder if to my ear, it didn't sound like you responded very much to the way the text was laid out on the page, but I'm curious, maybe you were, maybe that did affect you in some way. I'm not saying it should have or shouldn't have, but I'm just curious if visually on the page you responded to the words differently than if they would have just been in kind of the standard block that we otherwise see. I'm just curious. For Benjamin, the summary says that these texts were abbreviated. I would love to know if these texts in their original form are prohibitively long, or if the choice to abbreviate them was more artistically driven, and if so, in any particular way.
Thank you for asking that question. I think it's a great question. I left more of that looking at the poems visually when I was beginning to set them. For me, part of my process is memorizing them. And I try to memorize, as we said this morning, I try to memorize them as an actor does, as blankly as possible without inflection, so I give the subconscious mind the chance to percolate on the text. But no, I didn't. I think maybe some of the halting quality of the I kept from his visual architecture there. I think that was important for him to sort of. It was about ruin and decay, and to see things that were breaking apart visually on the page were more important for him. But our job, of course, is to translate it into a purely aural medium. So, no, not especially, but I did pay attention, of course, to his punctuation and his internal rhyme, which is so genius. I mean, I hope that you all go out and buy his poetry. He just had a new volume come out on W.W. Norton called Tough Luck. It's just as good as his first two books, if not better. So no, I didn't pay too much attention to his visual architecture, except to take in a general flow of the idea of what he was trying to do.
And to answer your question about text choice, I always think of Dishteliba, which was pretty much my favorite song cycle, and I remind myself that Schumann selected 16 of those poems out of 64, I believe, right? And that works perfectly, and you can still call it Dishteliba, right? It makes sense. So Spirits in Bondage is 40 poems plus a prologue, and so, to set all of that, and you'd be here a long time. We're talking opera length to do that. And that's not all of it. Part of, I think choosing your text is, you take into account what you want to express about the poet. You don't do anything that he or she wouldn't want you to do with that text, right? But at the same time, as a composer, it's our job to put our take on it. And so half of that is actually choosing your text and your form. Right, so by choosing the text that I chose, I wanted to highlight just a few aspects of this epically long poem. His kind of war story, first of all, his kind of feeling of everything that was mythical and beautiful being destroyed, right, something he probably picked up from his friend Tolkien during the war. And then the sense of loss, right, that you come home, to try to find your true love's house, and even if you find it, it's not the same. So, to me, those are like the three central concepts of these 40-plus long poems. And so, to spare the audience, I think 25 minutes is enough.
So I have a question for you, Benjamin. Did you have to look up some of the words in those poems? Because I don't know what they all mean.
Oh, yes, that's for
Yes.
sure.
Okay.
Still a little fuzzy on a couple.
Any other questions? Yes.
Again, kudos to both of you, especially for writing song cycles for us F-clef singers. Well, if you look at the number of American song cycles written for the bass voice,
The number of cycles written for the bass voice, period.
Yes, exactly, yes. We all have inspiration in our life, of course, and I'm a composer myself, and some of the things that have inspired me were actual voices, actual singers. My question is really for both of you, but Matt, if you were not a singer, did you have who would be somebody that you would look towards, either dead or alive, to sing your music, or did you have any specific basses that inspired you in your composition?
No, not specifically. The piece that this cycle started as one song, and then I showed it to my friend, the pianist Jocelyn Dewick. I hope some of you here know her. She's fantastic. Yay, good. And she requested a birthday gift for a friend of hers who's a bass baritone. And but also I wrote them knowing that, well, maybe I should write them so I could possibly sing them. So in that respect, I did write it with my voice in mind. But are there? I would guess generally the music that I've written for singers, I've always written it for the singer, and I always talk to the singer ahead of time, finding out not only the basic things about their range, but also things about their proclivities and things that they like, and asking if they have any. Do you have any pet vocal tricks that you really like doing? Can you do a crazy float up top? Can you, what do you like that's going to make you shine? And that's certainly something that I do take into account when I write for singers. Absolutely, yeah. But yes, I admire a lot of great basses, and we can have bass chat later on, of course. I mean, yeah, s'il y a people pensant, yeah, of course.
I think actually we're basically out of time. So basically, so I want to thank you. Go buy their music. Go visit their websites. Go say how great they are on Facebook. And
Foursquare is at the E.C. Shermer?
Yes, Foursquare Cathedral is at the E.C. Shermer booth. And I think Alan is coming up to do a final goodbye.
Thank you all very much. I just want to make one logistical announcement. We had to change a couple of session rooms for the 5 o'clock time. This session on harnessing the power of music is going to be moved to Cohiba 8 and 9. And many of you, due to your interest in this session, might be planning to attend Jocelyn Hagen's Graphite Publishing session at 5:15. And that has been moved to Cohiba 1 through 4. Okay, so the Publisher Showcase coming up at 5:15 is in Cohiba 1 through 4. And the Harnessing the Power breakout has been moved to Cohiba 8 and 9. Please join me in thanking our composers and Lori as well.